Oh my god, is that a little bit of leg? It is. Now you can see all the scars on my legs. Since before written history, wow, we made it 5 words in before I fucked it up. Nice. Since before written history, mankind has found solace in combat for entertainment, whether that be through paintings on the wall of some cave in France, or in a tale that's older than time itself. Combat has always been a warm story to tell by the fire at night. Tales of heroes fighting for one reason or another have been passed down for millennia, and not just because Brad Pitt was a perfectly cast Achilles. I mean, look at that bod! From the ancient Roman Colosseum to the octagon of today, combat for entertainment has never been more popular. From Heracles to Spartacus to Chuck Liddell, the stakes might change, but gladiators, they're still alive and well. Thriving in today's society, trading in swords and shields for gloves and tight boxer shorts. Greek heroes still walk among us, and they train at LA Fitness. But this video is not about them. This video is about pro wrestling video games. I think we can all agree I'm getting pretty good at this shit. As a kid growing up in the 90s, it was almost impossible to not be drawn in by the spectacle that was professional wrestling. The Monday Night Wars were raging, and all anybody wanted to talk about was Val Venus getting his hand cut off by Mr. Fuji. WCW versus WWF was a real rivalry, both in the ratings and on the playground. D-Generation X versus New World Order. It was only natural that professional wrestling would find its way to home consoles. Hold it right there, you cunt. What's wrong, Outback Shotty? Aren't you forgetting a few things? Well, oh, yeah, of course I'm missing a couple of things. What am I making, the Snyder cut of professional wrestling video game videos? That's a good one. Fine. You know what? You're right. For your sake, we'll go back a bit. Thank you. Everybody say goodbye to Outback Shotty. He doesn't come around often, but we always... Bye, buddy. Back in the arcade era, professional wrestling video games were pretty popular, but home gamers didn't get to experience the squared circle until 1986. A game called Puroresu came out for the Famicom. Puroresu, by the way, translates directly to pro wrestling in English, because back in the 8-bit era, they didn't have to try very hard. The weird part is that by the time it was ported to the US, it was actually the 3rd home wrestling game that was released. The first 2 were called Tag Team Wrestling and Muscle. Tag Team Wrestling, by the way, which was made by Data East, the same company that made Burger Time and Joe and Mac. The other was based off of the Ultimate Muscle manga in Japan. But let's get back to the 90s. Looking back on it, WWE has made a lot of games over the years, but our story really kicks off with WCW and a company called THQ. See, back in the 90s, WCW was amazing at branding. They had toys, they had comics, cartoons, movies, they had TV show appearances. They were killing it, okay? I mean, between 1997 and 2000 alone, they had 7 video games released, and 5 of them were made by THQ. THQ and good wrestling games went together like your stepsister and the dryer. If you're sniffing what I'm stepping in, and I am sniffing. Don't get me wrong, WWE was putting out games too. They were trying. They put out 17 video games in the 90s. But it wasn't until 2000 when they pried THQ from the clutches of Ted Turner that the tide really started to shift. Smackdown and WrestleMania 2000 really marked the tonal shift that was the landscape of professional wrestling video games for the new millennium. Smackdown will be the flagship game for the new direction of professional wrestling games on the PlayStation. Meanwhile, the same can be said for WrestleMania 2000 for the N64. Both games released to really good reviews, but both of them would just be outshined by their sequels. Smackdown 2 Know Your Role was the first game in the series that allowed you to make your own character, make your own wrestler, which is a feature that has carried on to today. I mean, why wouldn't it? Finally, you could fight all of your favorite wrestlers with your own created abomination. Universal praise and acclaim followed the game to the tune of 3.2 million sales. Damn, son. The N64 wasn't slacking though. THQ was cranking out video games like crazy. When it comes to video games, the THQ Professional Wrestling Development Division was the James Brown of video game developers. THQ was actually just the publisher. Shut up. Anyway, No Mercy came out for the N64 and it was fucking amazing. No Mercy was a game changer for the series. Updated graphics, championship mode, story mode, 63-person roster, 30 different match types, branching storylines, and a crazy improved creative wrestler mode. No Mercy set the high watermark for professional wrestling video games, and many people think that it hasn't been matched even to this day. Amazing how all that was held on such a small cartridge. As fantastic as No Mercy was, my personal favorite has to go with Day of Reckoning for the GameCube. I personally only really got into wrestling around like the early 2000s. Like I knew about the Monday Night Wars, but I really only started actually watching in the early 2000s, and that was about when Day of Reckoning came out. And I loved that game so damn much. I've put probably a couple hundred hours into a professional wrestling game. Like I played through the story on that game probably like 20 times with different characters. The first time I actually played through it, I didn't know that you could add points to your character to make them stronger. So I was basically at like the final match at WrestleMania for the world title, and I was still just this scrub that could barely pick up a female. It was bad. It was so dumb. And I didn't edit my character, so it was just the generic create a wrestler look until after I beat the game, and that's when I finally made him look like fucking Johnny Cage or some shit. And don't get me started on playing multiplayer with my friends. Like, I mean, back in the split screen era, hey, remember that video? Yeah, I played a lot of professional wrestling video games with my friends. Like, hey, remember that little bit right there? Yeah, that was based in truth. That wasn't just a gag, yeah. Day of Reckoning was great, and so was the sequel. After the Day of Reckoning era, though, there was a tonal shift in the entire professional wrestling games industry. Gone were the days of individual branding for the games, opting instead for a recyclable format where they could use it every year. The PlayStation released Smackdown vs. Raw. First releasing in late 2004, Smackdown vs. Raw became the cornerstone that would lay... Smackdown... Wow, what the fuck is wrong with me? This is why I didn't get into acting. First releasing in late 2004, Smackdown vs. Raw was the cornerstone that would lay the framework for all modern WWE video games. Massive rosters, fantastic graphics, create a wrestler, a million different game modes, story mode, 1,000 different match types. Smackdown vs. Raw was the new main game, and THQ let you know it. Every single year. Until 2013. Because they went fucking bankrupt in 2012. December 2012, by the way. So while the Mayans might not have predicted the end of the world, they might as fucking well have. How am I gonna go on without THQ Nordic? Actually, Nordic retained the rights to the THQ name, so they still exist, technically. Really? Yeah, nice. You should speed this up a bit. Good point. SmackDown vs. Raw then became WWE 2K series, which would continue to release every single year, even to this day. The problem was that by switching to the 2K series and no longer going with THQ, a lot of the stuff that made the SmackDown vs. Raw series fun just kind of got wiped away. The 2K series is, following tradition of course, buggy, it's just kind of There's really not a lot of polish in the games. They're buggy as hell. And honestly, just a lot of the little things that made the old games so much fun, it just doesn't seem to be there anymore. But that's not to say that there aren't other professional wrestling video games. There's still Fire Pro Wrestling, which incorporates the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling, which a lot of people wouldn't really know about. It's at least in America, at least. In America, we're so fixated on ourselves that we don't know about foreign promotions. There's the Lucha games for AAA. They're still out there. They kick ass. I mean, it's technically a professional wrestling game, I guess, but Def Jam Fight for New York in the Def Jam series. I mean, you can say that they're not, but they definitely are. I mean, Ultimate Muscle had a game back in the early 2000s, and it was pretty good, too. I mean, it's nice to see that a manga and an anime about professional wrestling had a fucking video game, so that's nice to know. And even back in the early Facebook era, back when Facebook still tried to get people to play their own hosted games like Farmville, there was a game called Wrestler Unstoppable that I played a lot. It was basically just like a role play game about professional wrestling, and honestly, I thought it was super fun because it was like when I was still like first deciding that it was super cool. it gave me a way to like be creative and do promos with people that were actually going to give a shit. And like we all took it seriously, and it was basically, for a professional wrestling fan, it felt like Dungeons and Dragons. That sounded way cooler in my head. So what was my ultimate point with this video? I don't really know. Okay? What am I, Exerbia? Every video needs to end with some mildly nihilistic yet hopeful point that puts you into a dark depression? No, what do you expect from me? I'm a dickhead sitting in a chair. I just liked playing pro wrestling games as a kid, man. So much so that as an adult, I went out and got trained. I paid actual money to become a professional wrestler. By the way, I'm a trained professional wrestler. No, really. That's me. This isn't a joke. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. It was a lighthearted little romp there. More Adam Sandler, a lot less Stanley Kubrick. I just wanted to have a little bit of fun. The last two videos have been pretty serious. So I wanted to just give a little shout out to something that played a good portion of time in my young gaming life, which also framed a lot of my mid-20s, clearly. So I hope you have a nice day. I know that the world is kind of on rocky terms right now, and thanks for 100 subs, by the way. I realize I'm a little late on that one, but I'm really enjoying myself, and we're all gonna get through this. I believe in you. I promise I don't mean to sound patronizing. One love.